Okay. Well, my name is Chad. About a year ago, God really started doing some healing in my life about a past event that was an abortion with a girlfriend that I had at the time. And I just wanted to share that with people, feeling God leading me to share that. So I'm going to read out of my journal, and then I'm sure that I will say extra things. So I titled this "A Journey I Didn't Know That I Was On." The old saying, hindsight is 20/20, is very accurate. In fact, it is a deep truth that I could not fully understand until I was in the second half of my life. What I can clearly see now is that these early events in my younger life have shaped me in ways that I never understood. I don't believe that I'm special in any way. In fact, I believe that if we looked and asked God to reveal it to us, each of us will discover that this is true. These events shape our lives for years to come, and most of us never even know it. I know that I didn't. There's a particular event in my life that started me on a journey that I didn't know I was on. When I was 16 years old, I had a girlfriend. We became very close, and we spent most of our time together. We both thought that we knew what love was, and we openly told each other that we loved one another. Looking at this now, I can see that we were on a horrible crash course. So after dating for about 6 months, she and I decided that we were ready for a sexual relationship. We continued to date for another year, and things seemed to be going really well. We thought of ourselves essentially as a married couple, and we had sex as often as possible. What an illusion that really was. We had no cares in the world. We had no concept of stress, or we didn't have to deal with financial realities or anything like that. We just thought that this is what being married would be like. But little did we know that we were on a course that was about to change our lives forever. During the spring of my junior year, she started to share concern that she might be pregnant. It just didn't seem real at first, and we just continued along for a couple months until the end of the school year. Once school was over, I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. I remember when she told me she was crying and upset. I had no idea what to do or say. I just remembered trying to comfort her and tell her that everything would be all right. Shortly after this, we started talking about what to do. There was talk about telling our parents and getting married, continuing on with life. But both, they had plans for college. We were both devastated that we would have to let our dreams go and that our lives were essentially over. So after a few days, I started to talk about abortion. I do not remember this entering my mind, but once it was said, I do remember thinking that this might be the exact option that we're looking for. We both were hesitant, but we also felt completely desperate and backed into a corner. Neither of us had much money. We had no idea how we could even get enough money to pay for an abortion. But she started talking with a friend, and a plan was developed. We decided that an abortion was the best option for us. We decided that we would tell no one, and it would just go away, and we could go back to our life as normal. Our plan was that we would lie to everyone. That does not seem like a good plan now, but we lied to our parents, we lied to our employers, we lied to our friends. We lied to everybody. She borrowed money from her friend, and she and I told our parents, employers, friends, everybody, that we were going to take in a beach day. The ride was very quiet. We arrived and we went inside. I remember that the lobby was full, and it was a rectangular lobby, and the chairs were sitting against the wall so that everybody could look at each other. But nobody was looking at anybody. it was very quiet. She had called and scheduled an appointment, and so she was called back. But after only a few minutes, she came back out and said we had to go. In the car, she was upset. She told me that the nurses there said that she was over 12 weeks and that they wouldn't be able to perform the abortion there. The ride home was even more quiet than the ride there. We had absolutely nothing to say to each other. So after this trip, I do not remember much in terms of anything that we talked about. I think that I began to shut down, and I was just completely overwhelmed. I'm sure she was too. I had no idea what to say or think or feel. So during this time, I don't remember a whole bunch, but the next thing that I remember was that another plan got developed, and that I was told that it was going to happen the next day, and that my girlfriend and her friend were going to go together to this other clinic that they found that could perform abortions after 12 weeks. So she and her friend made an appointment, and her friend went with her. The next thing I remember is getting a phone call letting me know that she was back home. And the next part is something that I'll never forget as long as I live. I arrived at her house. I walked in like I always did. Her mother was in the kitchen and told me that she was lying in the hammock in the backyard. I remember that her mother looked incredibly sad. I went outside and sat down next to her. She was sleeping. She woke up when I sat down and started to cry. She was obviously in a lot of pain, and she was doped up on lots of medications. She held my hand and just cried. I felt so horrible for her. As we sat there, both crying now, we said nothing to each other. I knew right then that this relationship was over. We tried for a brief period to continue, but she was very bitter now. I don't know if she really blamed me, but of course I felt like she did. And so shortly after the abortion during the summer, we broke up, and we did not ever get back together. We were both broken and changed. I am now 52 years old, and it has taken all these years for me to connect all the dots. Of course, I knew that this impacted me, but only now has God revealed how it all fits together. I am able to see how most of my troubles throughout my life are tied to this event and the choices that I made around it. As I chose to prioritize my relationship with my girlfriend, I began to turn my back on my family, my closest friends. This was most obvious with my relationship with my dad. I began to rebel and disrespect him. Most of the time, he asked me to spend time with him, but I just saw this as a way for him to control me or to get me to do what he wanted to do. It became worse after the abortion, and I was stuck on autopilot that I did not understand. I remember constantly wanting his approval, but each time rejecting him when he tried his own way of showing it to me. And then I blamed him for the rejection. I was in such a twisted, dark place for many years. As I continued on this blind course, I turned to anything that I felt would fill the gap and emptiness in my life. I drank a lot of alcohol. I partied several days a week, all through college. I tried to fill myself and gain acceptance with sports, women, hard partying. This even continued after I graduated from college. I had a younger brother who we went to the same college, and it was really a positive thing overall, but when I graduated, he was still at the college, so I would go back to the parties, and I used to be the star of those parties, and now I finally eventually felt the peer pressure to grow up and to move on, so I stopped attending the college parties. But then I was truly lost. I tried going to the bars, but this was even worse. I felt more rejected than ever because I didn't have as much money as my friends. I went into social work, and I simply couldn't keep up with them. Finally, they stopped calling, stopped asking me to join them, and I remember feeling abandoned and alone. One particular night changed my life. My friends all went out. They didn't bother to call me, didn't bother to see if I was available. And I decided to have a pity party for myself. I bought a fifth of Jack Daniels, drank it all by myself, and at home on my living room floor. I was home alone, and although I didn't know it yet, I was having the deepest spiritual crisis of my life. I passed out on the living room floor and woke up there early the next morning. I remember that I knew something had to change. I could feel my life spinning out of control. Right there on the floor, I prayed for the first time in years. It was a very simple prayer. It went something like, Lord, I am scared. I don't know what to do. You need to do something, because if you don't, I'm going to die. Please help me, Jesus. So the very next week, a man that I worked with asked me to meet his sister. I hesitated, but eventually I said, sure. Well, then he called me back a little bit later and told me that the sister that he wanted me to meet was out of town. But he had a younger sister that he thought I should meet. And I said, fine. I met her at his home business, which was an adult foster care home. I said earlier that I was a social worker, so I had clients there. When I was there for a work visit, we met and agreed to go out for lunch. Her name was Mary. I met her a day or two later at the Big Boy restaurant on the corner of Michigan and Fulton in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was smitten right then and there. I didn't know it, but that was the beginning of my healing and walk with Jesus. Mary arranged the meeting for me and Jesus. Jesus answered my desperate prayer from my living room floor by sending me Mary, because he knew and trusted that she would arrange the meeting. My Mary has walked with me for over 25 years now. I've struggled with the same roots of feeling rejected and unworthy of everything. And Mary has been an incredible part of my healing. She's known about the abortion since the very first months of our relationship. She's always accepted me, but I have still struggled with the feeling of rejection and being unworthy. It is only now that I am able to see what a huge part that the trauma from the abortion and all the surrounding choices has been. Jesus promised that he would use all things for my good, and I can see his handiwork throughout my life. He is bringing me to the deepest healing I have ever experienced in my life. And even now, I wrote that a year ago, even now, he's bringing me to even deeper healing. And it just continues, which kind of blows my mind. But I felt led to do this because my deepest desire is that anything that is in this testimony today might reach someone who finds themselves in this same kind of situation, and to know that there is a way out and that there is no need to be in the dark for years. If you've been in the dark for years, there's a way out. And I hope that this might help point you in the direction.